Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about Premodern again, Ankh Sligh, a real sweet old deck that I've decided, you know what, I'm going to make a thingy on it because it's like a budget deck, and I'm having a lot of fun making these kind of budget decks. It's interesting because, you know, it pushes your mind in different ways and gets you out of sort of the sort of prescriptive ways you make decks in general, especially for an old player like me. It's very pronounced, right? Like a lot of old ideas and sort of heuristics and things like that. Sometimes maybe get a little bit too ingrained, right? You know, you're not thinking outside the box as much as you should be. And so this kind of thing is a nice deck building exercise. Really flexes some of those muscles, so to speak. So yeah, it's fun for me. I think it's obviously useful for other people. You know, it's nice. It's nice. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so yeah, we got Ankh Sligh, and it's basically just Sligh with Ankh of Mishra, but minus fetch lands, more or less, more or less. Again, this is not going to be very any different than a typical sort of Sligh deck, right? We got a lot of our cards like Fire Blast, Incinerate, Lightning Bolt, again with your staples, just burn spells, right? Seal of Fire could be Firebolt if you'd like, right? Not a big deal to change those up. Of course, I think there are certain plus and minuses to either, but at the end of the day, they're more or less just shocks. Got Grim Lavamancer, only two here, right? Because we don't have the fetch lands to really power them up. So they're a little less attractive, and of course, we have the Mog Fanatics, Paul Lightnings, and Jackal-Pups as again creatures, and of course Flame Rift as a pretty sweet new card. Not exactly new card, but yeah. So there you go. Okay, and of course there's a couple different things here. Really only two, really notably. Flame Rift, right? This is a card that's 2 mana, 4 damage, sorcery, without anything like Barbarian Rings or Painlands, fetch lands to hurt us. The damage from Flame Rift is certainly much less of a pain, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word. Yeah, Flame Rift is kind of interesting. It's definitely a very powerful card. It's obviously symmetrical, so not having those extra damage sources makes it a little bit better. So plenty, couple Flame Rifts, a pair in this case, or even maybe the full 4 if you want to cut down on shocks. That could be okay too. And of course, the big draw to this deck, not playing any fetch lands, is Ankh of Mishra itself. This card is very sweet. It's a colorless damage source. It's a repetitive damage source. It hurts a lot of decks, like mid-range or control or ramp decks or whatever that want to go, that are really mana hungry. Really, any mana hungry deck, Ankh is going to be pretty good against. So yeah, this is pretty sweet. Also pretty sweet against a lot of the red hosers, right? Because it's colorless damage, so that's pretty neat. So yeah, this is definitely a pretty sweet card. Definitely pretty strong. Obviously very good against fetch lands themselves because they take 5 damage from the fetch lands. One to sack it, 2 for the original fetch land entering play, and then 2 for the land that they're fetching up entering play. So definitely pretty sweet. So you're probably thinking, did I just come up with this deck? No, this is an old deck from around 2002, 2003 in Vintage, right around when Fetchlands came out in Onslaught. A Sligh deck was in Type 1 at the time, or Vintage as we would know it now, and they capitalized on everyone using all the fetch lands, certainly much more than in Premodern, but obviously Ankh pretty good against fetch lands, and so this is the one of the earlier lists I could find, although I'm pretty sure I saw it in 2002, late 2002, but I can't remember. Anyways, I looked up on the mana drain, of course. the mana drain has gone through multiple revisions, so it's yeah, I don't know, kind of wonky. That's a whole subject in and of itself. So this is an early list I found on the mana drain in late 2003. Basically, more or less what we would have now. Again, obviously we don't have things like Sligh Firewalker, of course, or any Mox Rubies, you know, or Strip Mines or whatever. And of course we aren't playing any Wastelands because this is a budget deck. Of course, Wasteland itself would be a pretty sweet inclusion in this deck, forcing your opponent to play more lands and just being generally useful. Of course, it depends on what your idea of budget is. You know, is it total cost? Is it number of cards that are expensive? Yada yada, whatever. Anyway, so this is generally where the genesis of the idea came from. An old Type 1 deck from back in the day. Yeah, there you go. So pretty neat, you know. You can always look to the past to sometimes find ideas for current metagames and stuff, which is definitely one of my favorite parts of Premodern, looking at old extended or vintage or legacy decks or even standard decks, of course, and finding all these sort of hidden gems and such. So very, very sweet. Okay, so why would you want to play this deck? First off, based, right? It's based. Two, it's cheap, and that's based. We don't got a lot of money, and inflation and everything else is going up, and of course everyone's getting off the petrodollar. They're trading in yuan and dineros and you know, national currencies other than the dollar. So we're going to be seeing a lot more inflation as all of those dollars everyone used to have to buy oil with are coming back in the U.S. So you know, it's coming home to roost, so to speak. And yeah, not great. So you know, being cheap is great. Yeah. It's sweet and not cringe, right? Because you get to play Ankh and you get to play a bunch of sweet cards. And so that's cool. There's a lot of colorless damage sources, so obviously Curse Scroll along with Ankh is pretty sweet, you know. And Scroll, of course, I should have mentioned this earlier, is more or less non-negotiable. You gotta play Curse Scroll. It's great as a way out to, again, red hosers, so Cop Red, Silver Knight, things like that. Just being a great source of consistent card advantage, so you can't not play Scroll. It's certainly worth it for the, what, $70 I think for a playset or so. So that's very good. And of course you take less damage from your lands, which makes things like Flame Rift a little better, things like that. So you only really need like 3 lands in play. I mean, again, it depends on the situation, but in general, take less damage from your lands. Obviously, it's flipped a little bit when you have Ankh in play, but anyways, so yeah, these are basically it's Sligh, but with a little bit of a bit different damage profile, and it's cheaper, obviously, which is sweet. All right, what are the cons? Well, people think you are poor. That is bad. You shouldn't be poor. You just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and be rich. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and be rich. I mean, you know, sure, everything is stacked against you, right? You know, the people that already have wealth can make a lot of wealth, and the people without a lot of wealth, including and up to the middle class, you know, you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps or something. That's all you have to do. It's so easy. It's so easy. There's no corruption. You know, there's no collusion among the oligarchs. Just be rich. Easy game. 2, Ankh is not cheap. It can be very slow. Obviously, it's a 2-mana, more or less, artifact, and it can be a very awkward draw in the late game, like turn 4 or 5, when a lot of decks don't need to play more lands, or they can function off of 5 mana or something like that, which is not great. Not great. Of course, play and draw can affect this too. So if you're on the draw, that certainly makes Ankh worse. Not great. And of course, any other cons that would come with playing Sligh more or less already apply. And of course, Lavamancer is worse, which is unfortunate. But it's one of the few cards that actually is a good target for creature removal, so maybe that's not a big deal because it might not always live anyways. So yeah, Lavamancer being worse. Not a huge problem, but it is an issue. So yeah, obviously not having fetch lands is bad. Yeah, so yeah, there you go. But so nothing too strange, more or less the same stuff that we've seen with Sligh, or that I've said, talked about Sligh already. So without all these stupid fetch lands in the way, we can play a lot of really sweet basic lands. And of course, if you don't play good basic lands, you are cringe also, so add that to the list as well. So you need to play good basic lands. Now, fortunately, it's hard to screw up with um, mountains in Premodern, right? You can just play all sorts of sweet Premodern lands. Like if you're playing Ravnica Mountains, okay, that's pretty cringe, but there's a lot of great ones in Premodern, right? Just in the Premodern mountains. So again, first and foremost, one of my favorite mountains is the Unglued Mountains. Very based, very cool. I mean, it's a little expensive, right? But it is very cool. It looks great. Definitely a sweet look. I love it. Then we got stuff like the Mirage Mountains. These are very cool. They're very old school looking, very low res, and yeah, I mean that's pretty sweet. A lot of cool art on Mirage lands. I mean, really any of the set lands, which of course brings me to my next entry, which would be Invasion. The Invasion Mountains are very cool. Again, any like set lands, you know, Invasion, obviously Onslaught, all these guys are going to be pretty good. Even the mask ones, which I think are like maybe the weakest ones overall from all the sets in Premodern. I think they're maybe the weakest, but they're not bad, right? I think they're pretty nice too. I like this. This is a cool Invasion Mountain. Not my favorite land from Invasion probably, but it's just a cool one. It sticks out to me. I love just the really dark colors and stuff. Um, and yeah, it's great. It's cool. It's like looks like a big old thumb. I don't know why, but it looks like a big old thumb. And of course, if you really want to ramp up your budget budget deck, you know, you can play the Guru lands. Play Guru Mountains. You know, that's a good plan. You're like, say I'm playing my budget deck, and then slam down 20 Guru Therese Nielsen Guru lands. I think they're all done by Therese Nielsen, but whatever. Anyways, 20 Guru Mountains. They'll be like $10,000 or something, worth more than even basically any legacy deck. Yeah, so there, there you go. That's a good one too. Uh, in all seriousness, there's tons of great lands, and that is one of the coolest things that Ankh Sligh lets you do, is just choose whatever basic mountain. Sometimes you could just go with like total little kid mono red deck and just play a huge mix of them, you know, white borders, just random set lands, random promo lands, that kind of thing, arena stuff. That's really cool. I would even say it might even be based and red pilled to play like was it the 2003, 2004 arena lands that are based off like, that are new border, but I think they're based off like, they look like they're from like Onslaught or Terria. I think they're like Rob Alexander. And I have to look those up. Those are pretty sweet. But yeah, so there you go. Lots of sweet mountains to choose from. But yeah, that's basically it. If you wanted to play a more non-budget version of this deck, I would say something like adding Wasteland. I think just playing -4 mountains, +4 wastelands would be pretty sweet. Again, not exactly like red deck wins where you're like 4 waste, 4 port, that kind of thing. But I think, yeah, 4 wastelands probably pretty good. You probably don't need to play any additional mountains to support Fire Blast. I think that's fine. But yeah, I think 4 wastelands would be probably the only really necessary card you'd want to add to the deck, because it's certainly, obviously the mana denial component, more or less forcing them to play more lands into Ankh and taking more damage and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the sideboard's fine. You could add things like Lava Dart. Obviously, that's not a budget consideration. But yeah, there's, you know, not much I would change really about it. Lots of great stuff there. So yeah, But that's basically it. I mean, there's what more do you have to say? The deck's pretty straightforward. The uses of Ankh are pretty straightforward. Good against slower decks, rampier, dirtly decks. Good against decks that want to play a bunch of creature removal, so you have more non-creature removal cards. Always able to keep up consistently on the pressure. You can punish fetch land heavy draws, although that's again sort of up to chance, that kind of stuff. Yada yada. So again, I'm not really reinventing the red deck here, or really even giving you too much more new information. So I won't waste time and spam you with stuff that you already know, stuff I've already talked about in my Sligh Red Deck Wins videos. So yeah, but that's it for today, guys. So thanks for stopping by. I'll probably have a new budget deck thingy up at some point in time. Sorry it took me so long. I've just been so busy, you know, working and doing other stuff and, you know, family stuff and, you know, just living the life. Again, you know, stuff happens. I forget. I've tried to do this so many times that I've just been distracted by working on other videos and all this other stuff. But anyways, so everything's good though with me. Nothing wrong here. So thanks for stopping by, guys, and have a great day.